everyone and welcome to another video with me, 320 Sim Pilot, and today we're going to review the DC Designs Boeing Stearman PT-17, this biplane which is obviously a huge part of aviation history and a really interesting aircraft to have a go at flying. The Boeing Stearman was originally built as a trainer, of course, for the United States Air Force, but has been one of the most widely produced aircraft. 10,000 of these were built in various forms around the world, which is an amazing number. It is obviously a two-seater piston-engined biplane. It has around 220 horsepower, two-bladed fixed-pitch propeller, and it is not authorised for any sort of ice or nighttime flying. So unlike the Waco, which does look a little bit similar in the format, it is not going to be used for anything other than nice weather flying and aerobatics training, that sort of thing. This is available on the Microsoft Flight Simulator Marketplace, but also from JustFlight, and noticeably at a slightly cheaper price directly from JustFlight. I'm not entirely sure why, but the current retail price on JustFlight.com is £10.99p. Let's get into the review. Here on the Marketplace page, then you can see Stearman Model 75 by DC Designs. So as I said, sold through JustFlight as well as DC Designs. £12.49 on the UK Marketplace, so it's cheaper to pick it up at JustFlight. I really don't know why. I'm not being paid to say that or anything like that. It's just interesting. And here's all the pictures, a few of the nice liveries included, which we'll look at a few of those throughout the video. Once you've got it installed, you're going to find obviously the usual screen with the standard specifications. 13,000 feet ceiling is pretty typical. This airplane had 13,200 feet service ceiling and about an 83 knot cruise speed, so ever so slightly slower than that number is showing us there at 96 knots, I think. Also, the endurance, 4 hours, seems a bit far. I was expecting it to go a little bit slower than that. Sorry, a little bit less of a distance, but there we go. The range, probably somewhere around 200 miles, something like that. But it's not really a cruising airplane, more of a trainer. Here's the 6 liveries that it comes with, which are very nice. A few civilian and a few military, which is great. You can take your pick, of course. Hopefully some more will be brought out in the near future from the talented community. So here we are in the simulator with the DC Designs Boeing Stearman PT-17, and here's the first look at the visual model for you. It is a really, really nice looking airplane, and I think they've captured the shape and style really well with this model. The proportions and so on all look absolutely spot on. So yeah, I'm very, very pleased with that. It's really got a real nice sense of the era where it came from. Obviously, this was actually built and designed in the 30s and 40s, so it does look and feel the part, unlike the Waco, which was built much later to look like the part. So this actually is the real deal in the terms of its era. They've done a great job on the lines. You see all the lines behind the ribs of the wings and the fuselage and the tail and the reinforcements like that, which are all nicely put in. So yeah, very pleased with that side of the exterior model. This is a nice livery as well. And now I want to just talk about the texturing. So there are some parts of this model that look absolutely brilliant, and some parts I think could do a bit more of just a bit of a, I say polish, but I mean the opposite. I'd like to see them a little more grubby, a little more dirty. For example, if you look at the tail here, they've got the nice panel lines. So these would be fabric-covered airplanes, which is why you get this sort of effect as the parts are sort of, I don't want to say glued together, but the process of putting the fabric and joining it all up. So these lines are included nicely, but there's just sometimes a bit of a sharp edge, as you can see here. I don't know if you guys can see that in the recording. Hopefully you can. There you go. A bit of a sharp edge there, which would just be nice to see a few of these things tidied up around the back of the aeroplane. But again, the livery is spot on. Having said that, if we move forward along the aeroplane, and around here, I'd like to see some oil and dirt and grime and things like that. But that's me. That's my preference. I quite like the airplanes looking a bit worn because it's so rare to see a brand new airplane. But as we move forwards, things with the texturing really start to come to life, especially around the engine, which is a great place to put the work in because it looks fantastic. So you can see here, even these support braces for the wings, they've got sort of different textures to them, which look really nice. And then we get around to the engine, which I think is absolutely glorious. They've made a really good job of this. So like I say, some parts of the texturing at the back of the airplane perhaps could do, in my opinion, with a little bit of improvement, but you come around to the front and it's an absolute joy. Look at this engine, just fantastic. So all those fins you can see, and those thin bits of metal around each of the pistons, that's for cooling. This is how these engines were cooled, and that's why it's put out in the airflow. So Combustion engines are very inefficient. They burn a lot of fuel and they turn most of it into heat, and then they turn a bit of it into propulsion for that propeller. So these get very hot, so we have all these fins, and they get air cooled as they get blown over. Quite a common thing. You'll see a lot of this in the American. They use this sort of air cooled design for a long time, including into World War II. Whereas obviously with the Spitfire, we had liquid cooled engines in some of the British warbirds. P-51 of course also liquid cooled, but there we go. Before I get too distracted, really nice texturing, nice dirt and grime, just like I wanted to see. Engines don't stay clean for long, especially if you're actually going to use them, so that is really nice. The propeller's got a bit of wear on it, nice chrome and then a bit of grime on it, on the propeller hub. So really good job. I mean, I'm looking at a ridiculous detail here, and you're never going to use this view in the simulator obviously, but it's all here. And what I really like is you can zoom right in on the placards and it's all written out. You can read it perfectly, even the handwriting and the manufacturer number and so on. Absolutely brilliant. Continental engine, it looks like, judging by that label. So yeah, definitely great job on the engine, which is really nice. And the same goes for the labeling all around. We've got different labels here as well. You can even see the pressure in the shock absorbers. But I'd just like to see so this, these labels are great. Maybe it'd be nice to have a few more bits of grime and oil around on the struts and so on. But this is, for the price of this package, it's hard to get too worked up about that, especially when this is the view you're really going to see. And the big feature is, again, that nice engine sitting out in the front on display like that. So really nice. Something I haven't been able to find is chocks or anything like that, or opening up there's no, as far as I can tell, there's no doors to open. I think they just climb in through the top of the fuselage. But yeah, it would be nice to have just some chocks or some ground equipment, but this airplane doesn't really have it. It has a battery and a starter, and that's about it. But yeah, some chocks might have been nice or something like that. I quite like this detail as well, this handle here on the edge of the wing, presumably to help ground maneuvering. Before we do anything in the cockpit, it's incredibly simple. We've got a fuel selector, on or off, that's it. We've got a control lock here, which you can lock the flight controls, but I'm not sure if that is modelled or not. Let me see if I click it down. Doesn't seem to make much difference, but that could be the way my controls are set up. Parking brake over here, transponder beneath it. Over here we have the engine primer, nav lights and strobe lights, starter switch. This is the magnetos, battery and avionics. Avionics presumably only includes that transponder, and the radio's down here, I imagine. Throttle and mixture, it's got a fixed pitch propeller, so we don't have to worry about that. Here's the trim control, so if I run the trimmer, you'll actually see that turn, which is quite cool. So that's all there, which is great. We've got the fuel gauge is up here. It's currently at half full. That gauge will go down the lower the fuel is, which makes sense. So if I go into payload and adjust the fuel, that window's too big. Let's shrink that down. There we go. Right. So yeah, if we adjust our fuel, you'll see that gauge move. So it is modelled, and there's even a little E at the bottom for empty, just in case you forget which way around it works. So there you go. So we'll go with about half fuel like we had. The next thing I want to show you is, at the moment you can see there's no pilot in the front. This is a two-seat aeroplane. It's a trainer, so you'd have a student in the front, and the solo flying is all done from the rear seat, which is what we've got here. But we have the choice to add a passenger to the front seat. So if we jump back into the cockpit and go to our payload, all we need to do is put in a weight over 100 pounds in here. So I put in another 200, nope, not 2,000, that might not work. There we go, 2,000 pounds there. And although they don't appear here, if I jump outside, there we go, we have both of our passengers. Would be nice, I think it'd be really fun if they could appear in this view as well. I'm not sure if there's a way to do that, but I think that would be another nice detail. But there we go. You'll notice our crew are looking a little bit modern, a little bit trendy. They are clearly jumping in with some nice modern day headsets. Oh, as you get too close, they'll disappear. That's pretty standard in Microsoft Flight Simulator, as it swaps to the sort of the more advanced cockpit when you get to a closer view. But there we go. So there they are. But we can actually make them a little bit more traditional. Let's press this button here, which is the crew select. It's actually meant to be part of the transponder, but if you do that, you get a more official World War II era crew, which is really nice. So there we go. And I think that's nice. I think we'll use these guys for today. They're well equipped to be flying a Stearman. So now what I want to do is start up the engine, so we can use the inbuilt checklist, which is just here, which is great. I always like having these available. Canopy is open, not sure what that means. Ignition switch is off. Well, our magnetos need to be off, so we'll just make sure those are. And while we're here, let's check that the starter is off, which it is. Good stuff. So we can tick that. Parking brake on, that is down here. That's released and pulled is on. Tick. So that's all good. Now we'll move on to starting engine cold. So battery on. Get the clunk. Avionics on, that turns on our radio panel and transponder down here, and my Logitech radio panel comes to life, which is great. Carburetor control full cold, that is down here, quite well hidden, but luckily labeled really nicely. You hold your mouse and it says carburetor heat cold in brackets, or hot 100%. So cold, tick. Strobe light can come on, which is over here. Now light's already come on. Strobe light on. Mixture control full rich, that's this one, fully rich. Ignition magnetos both on, so let's set this to not left, not right, both. Throttle open 1/2 inch. Needs a bit of open throttle, otherwise it can't start up properly. And now we're going to engage the starter, so I'll let you listen to that. So there you have it, some of the sounds from the startup and sitting at idle. I'm a big fan of the sounds on this engine. I think they've done a fantastic job. The engine really sort of splutters to life. It takes time. It's quite slow to respond at times, but you really get that through the audio. You don't need to look at the RPM gauge. You can hear the engine being slow to respond or struggling when it's put to idle on the ground. You heard it there spluttering away. It's not too comfortable, you know, so you keep it idling at a slightly higher RPM. That also prevents fouling the magnetos, which is pretty common in piston engine airplanes. So yeah, really nice work on the sound. It's a definite highlight of this model, of this product I should say, is the sound effects on that engine. Really impressively done. So here we are now taxiing out, and the first thing I'll say about the Stearman's taxiing is it is a lot easier than I expected. Somehow they seem to have avoided the worst of the ground handling issues we've seen in some aircraft, although still not perfect on takeoff. There's still that oversensitive rudder at times caused by Microsoft Flight Simulator's extra grippy sort of tarmac interface, but it's not as bad as some. It's also quite controllable, so you get the ability to really drive it around on that tail wheel. I had no trouble. It's very straightforward using the rudder pedals to steer it around on the ground. The brakes are nice, they work well, probably better than the real airplane. I'm guessing older aircraft like this didn't tend to have the best brakes, or certainly they weren't toe brakes usually. So yeah, but it's very straightforward. The only thing that's a challenge is the visibility. It is hard to see out of a tail dragger like this, which is what you would expect really. So yeah, I can't complain. I'm using the normal seat position. I don't find I need to use that raised spacebar position. It doesn't make as much difference as it has in other tail draggers. So this default view is quite nice. So yeah, here we go into the takeoff. I'm applying full power, trying to keep it straight. You can see the rudder pedals at the bottom of the screen there. It does take a lot of rudder to keep it straight, so it takes a bit of practice to get used to that. But I soon found that the best way was to get it in the air without too much delay, and up and away we go. So you'll have seen, yeah, large rudder inputs needed during the takeoff roll as that torque bites and as the tail wheel comes up and so on. So it's something that certainly takes a bit of time to get used to. So here we are then cruising along, I believe this is Long Beach. I'm not very familiar with America, but yeah, we should be somewhere near Los Angeles, cruising along in the Stearman. It seemed appropriate, being a very American airplane, of course. So what is this airplane like to fly in Microsoft Flight Simulator? Well, as you can see, there's no instruments, so we are very much talking about visual navigation, and by that we mean looking outside, using a map and timing. However, Microsoft Flight Simulator does help us out here. If this intimidates you too much, don't worry, you can just press V or whatever your keyboard's set to and see exactly where you are as you cruise around. But also, the scenery is so good, you should have some visual cues outside. But yeah, quite a basic set of avionics, which is, again, reflected, I suppose, in that price tag. So yeah, pretty pretty nice to handle. It's an aerobatic aeroplane. It's not like the Waco. It is incredibly different from the Waco to fly, funnily enough, despite looking broadly similar sort of basic design. It is very aerobatic, but not very fast, so I can go full throttle now, and you'll see we sort of struggle along. Again, that cruise speed should be somewhere in the 80 to 90 knots area, but we are going to find that it is going to be a little bit difficult to get faster than that, especially if we keep level flight. There we go. So there we go. We're just about breaching 100. So you're not going to cover much ground. However, the actual handling and flight model is what we're really interested in here, because this is what this airplane is designed for. So let's try out some aerobatics. First thing I'm going to tell you is the roll rate is ridiculous. It is so fast, and I have no idea if that's accurate or not, but this was an aerobatic aeroplane, and if you look up videos of it, especially old USAF training videos, they do some really spectacular aerobatics with it, especially the roll rate. So it seems plausible. There's a big ailerons out there. I know they're just on the lower wing. So if I go full stick, and what I'm going to do now is an aileron roll. So I'm just going to fly level, get the speed up a little bit. We have to be below 125 knots for an aileron roll, I believe, according to the manual at least anyway. So let's get that speed up to about 100. And then all we're going to do is I'm just going to raise that nose slightly and then go full left on the stick, and we'll roll the airplane around. So here we go. So there's 100 knots, raise the nose, and full left stick, and there it goes. Incredible. Really remarkable roll rate. I mean, it's great. It's great fun. You can get out of lots of trouble when you can roll the airplane that quickly. Let's just do that again. We'll do it the other way to unwind it. So up and then full right, and round it goes. Really remarkable. So obviously from that we can do a whole lot of other things. A barrel roll is very straightforward. I'll keep the power on full actually, and then we'll just bring that up, trying to level the wings through the horizon, up and around, and that's a bit slow, not a very good barrel roll. But there we go. The problem I have with the sensitivity of the ailerons is that it's actually quite hard to pull back without rolling the airplane, so you have to get used to that. So here is the massive Los Angeles International. So let's try out a loop. So I'm going to lower the nose, keep the power on, get it over 100 knots to enter a loop in this airplane, and there's 120. We'll pull back. Trying to keep those wings level is the hard part of this. Keep pulling. It will run out of energy quickly if I let that loop go too wide. So we'll get it through the top. The amount of times I've just stalled out the top of a loop in this airplane. Hear the creaking of that G-force, and there we go, round the loop. Really nice sound effects. Again, that incredibly sensitive roll rate there at the other end. Let's now go and try out a stall turn. So that rudder at the back, if I give a bit of full left rudder, a full right rudder, it's quite effective, but it's not, we're not looking at like an extra 300 here. So let's get that nose up into the vertical. We're over 100 knots, so pull up into the vertical, get to the top, full left rudder, try and get that nose to drop to the left. There it goes. Back down, straighten the rudder, and bring the nose back up. There we go. So stall turns nicely manageable in this airplane. You can fly it inverted, but it's gravity-fed engine. So if we roll it inverted, very easy to do. We sit here like this. You'll hear that engine, and look at that RPM dropping and dropping and dropping, even though the airspeed's staying relatively the same. Yeah, it's not meant to fly along inverted, and that RPM will keep dropping, and we'll find ourselves running out of airspeed. There's through 80 knots, 70 knots. The engine, of course, windmilling with the airspeed outside. So let's get ourselves back over, get the fuel going back into the engine, which it does automatically, which is really nice, and away we go. Next thing then I want to look at is stalls. It is designed for stalling and spinning, obviously, because of training. I, however, have not really successfully managed to spin the DC Designs Stearman, and I don't know why. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I've tried everything I can think of. I'm sure some other people out there will manage, but yeah, so I was hoping it'd be a little bit easier to spin, so let's give that a go. up here then at 5,600 feet, and it's time to try out the stalling. So I'm going to idle the power. It does feel very high in this airplane, I must say. Things aren't happening very quickly down there. And we'll keep ourselves level. Engine making that lovely sort of idling sound it does. Keep putting up on the nose. Quite a hard horizon flying into the sun, which does make that a bit more tricky. And let's put it all the way to the stall. No stall warning or anything like that. It's up to us as pilots to recognise it. So I'll just hold that. And there's full backstick. The nose drops and a wing does drop. And there we go. Into a fully developed stall. Almost a spin, I'd say. Yeah, perhaps maybe I was making life too difficult. I was trying to spin using the rudder. However, you will notice that the airspeed's got sort of 70, 80 knots. Now, it's possible to stall at any airspeed. But if I let go of the stick, you'll notice the airplane instantly responds, which is not quite how you'd expect a spin to handle. So that seems like more of a fully developed stall to me. I'm going to try once more. So we'll keep that nose up, let the airspeed wash off. It does wash off very quickly. Let's hold the nose up. Again, quite fun having no stall warning. Kicking the rudder, see if I can get it to spin. You'll notice it actually goes the other way. So yeah, I haven't quite found a way to spin this airplane in what I would call a proper spin, a fully developed spin. But there we go. The stalling characteristics, I would say not the easiest in the world. So to those of you who are not too familiar with airplanes, it has the advantage that it will force you to be aware of the stall, because this will happen to you. It will just drop a wing on you straight away. I don't know if it's because of those super sensitive ailerons, but if you're flying along like this and you get distracted, you don't realise that you've lost all your speed and you've got your nose up. Do one more here, just holding it there. I'm just going to try and pull as straight back as I can. Straight. There's the stall. Yes, it is possible, and there goes the wing. Nope, so it drops a wing almost every time. Really interesting. High wing airplanes seem to drop wings quite easily, and this of course does have a high wing. It also has a low wing, but yeah, I don't know what the real airplane would have been like, but it's interesting to see an airplane in Flight Simulator that doesn't just stall straight and level. It forces you to it will bite you. That is a stall that you need to be aware of, so you don't want to get that happening to you on final approach, because you'll be quite difficult to recover, unlike some of the more docile airplanes. So yeah, summary on the flight characteristics. The pitch is pretty standard, about what you'd expect, definitely enough for aerobatics. The roll is incredibly sensitive and it feels nice. This feels like a light, nimble aeroplane in the sky. Unlike the Waco, which feels really quite heavy, this feels light and nimble, which is of course it was. It was a lightweight trainer designed to get people used to stalls and aerobatics and so on. So yeah, really quite pleased. I do like the handling of this airplane, and I can picture having some good fun flying around and trying out some different things with it. Really pleasant to take to the air, and it has some characteristics of a real airplane, especially that wing drop in the stall. I would just wish there was a way to spin it a little bit more easily, but again, could be something I'm doing wrong. Here we go. This is a stall turn where that was left rudder, but if you get it in too late, the speed washes off so quickly, then I don't think these people would be thanking us for doing our aerobatics over them. Let's go to the beach. Yeah, so stall turns are easily doable. You've just got to be quick with it. So by the time I'm here, if I haven't got the rudder in, there you go, there's the rudder. Oh, not enough. No. Oh, there we go. We made it just about. So now let's come in for an approach, and let's talk about the carburetor heat. This is a nice feature. So in the descent, in humid conditions, you might use the carburetor heat to prevent icing in the carburetor. It's caused by reduction in pressure as the air flows through a venturi, which just can cause some icing. If I hold the RPM steady, so I've set my RPM to 1500 RPM, what happens with the carburetor heat is you put some hot air into that carburetor, and that slightly reduces the density of the air, which means less fuel, which means we get this reduction in RPM. So there you go, slight reduction in RPM with the carb heat on, and as I remove it, RPM increases again. So that's nice to see modelled really, really spot on. Now let's idle that engine. Let's put the carburetor heat on, and let's get the nose down, and we're going to go just do a spiral down to land here, and I'll just talk about the landing characteristics of this aeroplane. So the there is not going to be an easy aeroplane to land. It's a tail dragger, and of course I'm not particularly used to tail draggers, and I know plenty of you won't be either. Just to actually, maybe we'll just get away with just an S turn here. No, we'll do a big loop round. Yeah, so it's a slightly different technique to landing. I'm not going to try and pretend to do a tutorial on it because I'm sure I'll just get it wrong. But this is one of the easier tail draggers that I've flown in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Now, we still suffer from flight simulators over the top grip on the ground, but this particular add-on seems to not suffer from it as much as some others, and I don't know why. Possibly just to do with the fact it's quite a lightweight airframe, so it seems to work really nicely. The landing view is an option. I don't actually find myself using it very much because you get a really good view out the front of this airplane. Even so, let's get that speed back. This mirror up here does work ever so slightly, but it doesn't really provide you with any useful information. If I roll it upside down, you'll see that it does give us the blue of the sky. And there you go, there's that incredible roll rate. I'm really, really not sure. We need to speak to a Stearman pilot to find out whether that sort of maneuver would be possible in the real aircraft. But there we go. Right, let's get that speed back. We're on profile. So for landing, I'm simply going to get that speed to about 60 knots and then bring it in with a bit of a normal flare. And then we just need to be careful with our throttle and rudder after touchdown, or we can ground loop the aeroplane. So it's all about small, smooth control inputs at this stage, especially after those main wheels touch down. Idle the power, holding it there, holding it there, holding it there. There's touchdown. You see it's bounced slightly. If you do too much in the air there, you're just asking for trouble. So I'm putting in a lot of left rudder. I'll show you my rudders there. There we go. Right. And there's the tail wheel. Not good to land that tail wheel. Okay, and we've made it down. Full backstick now just to keep that tail on the ground, and we'll roll out. It does have toe brakes, or my toe brakes work. I don't know if the real aircraft had toe brakes or not. The pedals don't animate it, but yeah, the braking's, just be careful not to squeeze them on too much, or you'll find yourself toppling over the front. And there we go. So I've decided to be a bit silly here. I'm going to try with a bit of a crosswind. So got a crosswind from the right now, about 11 knots. Let's see if I can handle this. Yeah, most tail draggers, that would be a no in Microsoft Flight Simulator for me. So let's give it a go. Right, so yeah, wind's blowing us across from the right. I seem to have lost all power. That's not good. 3-point landing, bit of left rudder. There we go. Yeah, I think my engine was off for that landing, but so that was a bit of a glide approach, but just shows you this, and you see that windsock over there. This airplane, yeah, is that's the engine shutting down. Is a much more manageable tail dragger. It's one of the more manageable tail draggers I've seen in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Really, really quite fun. You can try out a lot of different things, and of course, the landing roll, if you get it right, is very short. There we go. Now let's talk about virtual reality. So here it is, me using my Oculus Rift S headset. I'm using an RTX 3080 graphics card and an i7-10700K processor with 32GB of RAM. I find the performance to be very good, as you'd expect really. This is a light aircraft. It doesn't have much in terms of avionics or systems, so it is pretty light on frames. I would say it's as good as the default airplanes and everything I've seen. I've had absolutely no trouble with the frame rate, but again, I would expect that from an airplane like this. So in virtual reality, the performance is as you would expect. It's very good, or as good as your virtual reality should be with other aircraft. The texturing in the cockpit really shows up nicely here. You've got some really good textures on that front panel, although as we've said before, looking behind you can be a little bit disappointing because it's just so clean and plain directly behind you, but where it matters, where you're looking, is actually really, really nice. Flying a biplane in VR is an absolute joy. I'm a huge fan of this. I can't recommend it enough. It's definitely the way to experience this. The Waco was the same, where you get to put your head out the cockpit and just really experience everything around you and look down to see all the scenery that you're trying to follow. I absolutely love it. and with the good performance that you get with it, it's ideal for it. And travelling slowly over the ground and the scenery gives you more of a chance to sort of soak in the flight simulator way. So yeah, very, very impressed, and the VR is very good. So those instruments, talking about VR compatibility, it is fully compatible with VR according to DC Designs and JustFlight. What that means, or what I've seen, is that the switches are movable with the left view of your eye, if that makes sense. So when you try and use the mouse on a 2D panel, or sorry, on the virtual cockpit right in front of you, you find that you end up with two mouse cursors in front, appearing. And if you look through just your left eye, then you can line it up with the button. Once the mouse finds a button, it's perfect, and what it does is it goes to a proper 3D view, and you can only see one mouse button, and then you can click on the switch. So clicking on the switches is actually easier than you'd first think, because at first I found the mouse, I couldn't really picture where it was, but once I got it lined up with a button, by using my left eye to line it up with the button, then it all worked as normal. So yeah, it is compatible. It takes a little bit of getting used to. It's not the best I've seen, because what I would prefer is that the mouse travels over that panel in front of me all the time in 3D, but it seems to only work when it reaches a button. But it does work, and you're not going to be doing a whole lot of clicking on that panel, I'm going to say. It just isn't required. Flying in VR also obviously helps out with the landings, but this airplane again has good visibility in both 2D and virtual cockpit views in VR, so there's no issue whichever way you choose to fly it. So in conclusion, what do I think of the JustFlight and DC Designs Boeing Stearman PT-17 from Microsoft Flight Simulator? This is a well-rounded package. There are no really concerning weak points of the product that I found during my time reviewing it. It was sent over for review, but I've had no trouble with it at all. It runs well on my system, and certainly comparable to other small general aviation airplanes. But what I particularly like is that the modelling and texturing are all really quite nice, with just a few minor niggles. As I said earlier, I'd like to see a sort of a more dirty style texture aircraft with a bit more detail, especially on the rear half of the airplane. But the engines are excellently modelled. The sound effects are a particular highlight, as well as the flight model, which is really enjoyable. Where this airplane excels is just cruising it around, doing some aerobatics with it is an absolute joy. It is a light and nimble airplane. It's a good platform for learning aerobatics. It will punish you for errors, but it will let you get away with them as well. So it's you'll learn your lessons and get to practice more and more while feeling quite accomplished, which is exactly what you want from a trainer, really. And it won't come up to bite you too nastily. It's also a good biplane and tail dragger to practice on, because it has forgiving tail dragger handling and a good view out the front. So yeah, I've really enjoyed my time with it, and for the price, it is hard to say it's anything other than good value. I'd say it is a good value product. It includes a lot of things for the money. I'd like to see a few extra little details, perhaps like some chocks would have been nice as well, but again, that's comparatively nitpicking. If you'd like to see more reviews, do please subscribe to the channel. There'll be more videos and reviews coming, as well as live streams and of course Airbus tutorials, so do please subscribe if you'd like to see that. Otherwise, do keep safe and well. We'll see you again in another video very soon. Bye bye.